I'm so tired of people saying that it's just a movie, it's just a comic book, it's just a TV show. No, it's not. Stories are the building blocks of our culture, of ourselves, even of our own psychology. We are a product of the stories we tell ourselves about our own past and the experiences on a daily basis, but also the stories that we choose to spend time with. What types of values or feelings or whatever are they promoting? What types that we like to spend our time around? They're going to shape us. They're going to shape our personality and character, and they're going to shape our perception of the world and the acts and behaviors that we put out into the world. And people don't understand that. They go, it's just a movie. It's just this. I can like and promote whatever I want. Well, of course you can, but you should pay attention to the responsibility that you have.
Consume stories responsibly.
As a member of society, as a human being, responsibility to yourself.
Consider the consequences.
You need some balance. You need some certain criteria that is going to make sure you're promoting the right kind of works, or at least have thought through the type of work that this or that story is going to do in our culture, and then make your own decision whether or not that's something you want to support.
Consume stories responsibly. Consider the consequences. Consume stories responsibly.
Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another Office Hours live stream. Hopefully you guys had a good week. Welcome to those who just made the jump from the Star Wars EU book study stream, which was literally just a few minutes ago. I thought I'd be later, but not so much. I was able to transition and switch over quite quickly there. So good to see everybody. Let me welcome the chat here. Let's see. Ghost Planet Max Inc. was first. Great to see you there. Darth Enigma, good to see you. Do you have the right one? Yeah. He said the Star Wars EU writers added to the lore of Star Wars while trying to maintain Lucas's version. Disney wants to tear it down and rebuild it in their own image, such as the Way of Vanity. You're absolutely true. I mean, absolutely right. Yeah, we'll talk about that. For a second, I got stumbled up because you were talking about the EU, and I thought, do I have the wrong stream up? The one that was just on? No, you're talking about content for tonight is also Star Wars. Not just Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars is the current story that gave me the opportunity to talk about this problem that I see, which I'm going to talk about, but it also applies to other franchises. So if you're not so much a Star Wars person, it applies to DC, it applies to Marvel, it applies to all these things. I think maybe more so Star Wars in a lot of ways. Lord of the Rings is a good analog. Sound Engraver and I were talking about that earlier. So the Imaginative Hobbyist, welcome. Dr. Y, good to see you. Don't see you too often or all the time, but great to see you. Haven't watched a stream since last year. It's that long. Nathaniel's Lozball, good to see you there. Andre Hernandez, thanks for coming back to another stream. Darth Enigma, stress levels 99%. You guys too. Private Eye in Retrospectiva. Dread Pirate Bromando. So Professor Geek is just like Caitlin's at the store. He always arrives when you least expect him. Caitlin's at the store. Is that a reference I'm missing or just didn't catch? Thank you, though. Ed Star, great to see you. Thanks again for that super chat. You super chatted me right at the end of the last stream, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got to get over here. And I thanked you, but if in case I didn't thank you enough, I do appreciate that. Chitlins, you meant. Okay, yeah, I was like, Caitlin's? What is Caitlin's? Where is this reference? Okay, she is a mistype. Leia Plus Size, good to see you there. Darth Prime. Lots of people here. Of course, my dear, sweet, amazing wife, Sound Engraver, who I'm just going to say now, she is streaming tomorrow night, and she has a really cool topic, too. And thanks to my dear wife, Sound Engraver, for this new mic, which I think is, I'll listen to the playback, but I think it's got a little bit more of a professional sound. It's definitely an upgrade for me, mic-wise. The mic I'd been using for years was like a Neewer NW7000, which was just like bottom of the line. It came with the boom stand and all of that. Hey, it got me through. It was a nice mic to have, so Leia Plus says your birthday. Is that true? Someone is saying happy birthday to you. Darth Enigma saying happy birthday to you. Did I miss that? If so, happy birthday to you. Must have missed that on Facebook. Oh, your birthday is Monday. Okay, that's why I haven't seen it on Facebook. Well, happy early birthday to you. All right, so let's go ahead and get into our topic tonight. As I say in the thumbnail, I really enjoy that thumbnail, and it should be a meme. People should show it around. I came across an article, an interview, or it was highlighting a question that was asked of Jon Favreau in an interview. I thought it was interesting, his response to it. And Soundgraver was telling me about, she was watching RJ's the Fourth Age, and he was talking about Bob Iger, really kind of explicitly stating, in the midst of all the backlash that people are rightfully giving, the assignment of whatever her name is, the director of the new Rey movie, the fact that they're even continuing the story of Rey, the character universally just, the public said no, culture said no to Rey. That was a character that Kathleen Kennedy put all of her chips on, forced onto you. That was her only direction to J.J. Abrams when he was making The Force Awakens, was just make the lead character a woman. Because that's all Kathleen Kennedy cares about when it comes to Star Wars. It's just a vehicle for feminism. That's all we care about. And so this character was manufactured. She didn't come in organically. She was she's just whatever, manufactured to be a feminist poster child. And at the end of that, trilogy, who wanted to hear from her anymore, other than people? That's the thing. When you get poster children characters like this for ideologies, like Captain Marvel, she's another one, or Kamala Khan, she's another one. No one actually really likes these characters. Even the people that claim they like these characters, they like seeing their ideology championed. They like the fact that their ideology is being championed, that their ideology is being placed on the posters of these movies, quote unquote posters. No one really likes these characters because it's impossible to. These characters have no depth. They have no, there's nothing you can be inspired from. They're mouthpieces. They're mouthpieces for an ideology, an agenda. And so no one wants another Rey story. Even those who say they do, they just want more mouthpieces for their agenda. That's just, more opportunities for their mouthpiece of their agenda to speak. And that's, you don't want story then, you want a sermon, So the fact that they're doing the movie is absurd, and rightfully so. There's backlash about it. They are trying to paint it, just what business as usual. What is their MO? Pretend that any kind of logical backlash is just trolls. Oh, it's you basement dwelling incels. Oh, or if they don't go that route, it's you're just so negative. You stop it with the negativity. As I said in my last stream, criticism is not negativity. Constructive criticism, story criticism, that's if you're writing a story, if you're making art, then be prepared for it. Even if you're announcing the type of art you're going to make, if that's the wrong approach, you're going to get criticized, and it's rightfully so. So Iger apparently explicitly stated in some, I don't remember if it was an interview or, you can check out The Fourth Age. Apparently he talked about it recently, but explicitly stated that he wants, and Kathleen Kennedy has said this before, it's nothing new. It's nothing new. They've said that they want to evolve Star Wars away from Lucas's vision. Oh, we love Lucas. We'll say all these wonderful things about Lucas, but we're in a different time now. We got different audiences. We got new generations. We want to evolve the franchise, evolve it into, new and what it should, be. And so I make that thumbnail that you're not evolving Star Wars. When it comes to the evolution of a franchise, of a story, of a character, that happens organically. If you're trying to evolve something, it's just like evolution in biology, right? You can't try to evolve something. That doesn't work. It's something that happens naturally. Superman naturally shifted from just being able to jump tall buildings in a single bound to actually being able to fly. That was a natural progression. It's what the public wanted. They pretty much figured he was flying anyway. By the time we hit the radio, let's just make him fly. It wasn't people weren't trying to evolve the character. The only because if you want to evolve Star Wars, then you got to have a motive. And what is their motive? Their agenda, their ideology. Let's evolve Star Wars past this hero's journey and make it 100% an unquestioned platform for our ideology. That's what Iger and Kathleen Kennedy are all about. So you're not evolving Star Wars. Evolution is something that happens naturally and organically in a story, in a mythology. What you're doing is changing it. You're outright changing it abruptly, unnaturally, uncomfortably, disgustingly, changing it. Now, this ties in with a interview or a question that was asked to Jon Favreau. Jon Favreau, to his credit, as far as I know, didn't say he's wanting to evolve Star Wars, but he was asked. They asked him, since you're, a little bit more power, making the movies and all that kind of stuff, could you ever have any sway to re-release the original trilogy in the original format, the original theatrical release, not the specialized editions, that Lucas did in the 2000s, but the original. And, technically they haven't been released since the last release of those was in the first DVD release of the specialized Star Wars original trilogies came with a separate disc of the theatrical version. That's the last time that's been officially sold by Lucasfilm. Before the specialized versions came out, they did VHS. They were still selling those, but DVD form, I think the only time DVD has officially been sold was in that first package of the specialized version, which had a DVD of the theatrical trailer as well. I have those. I also have some pirated copies that I was given of the Blu-ray of the theatrical version, which is very well done. I don't know how to sail the high seas, really. You talk to Al about that. He knows all that kind of stuff. These were given to me and they're wonderful, wonderful editions. So people, piracy on the one hand, yeah, it's against law. You're taking away copyrights, and I get that. I'm not necessarily a champion of piracy or whatever. I'm not necessarily against it either, but I really do think piracy is kind of necessary when it's something that people won't give us. Look, we want this movie. We want a good copy of this movie, and you won't give it to us. So I kind of like that it exists. Call me crazy. I mean, I don't do piracy. I don't go out and buy piracy, but or find it or download it, because I wouldn't know how to download it safely anyway if I tried. But these were given to me and they're great. So you can find those as well. So anyway, back to the story. They were asked Jon Favreau, could you ever, maybe use your sway, do you think, to have Disney release, or do you think they ever will release the original theatrical cuts again? And his response to the question was, I think, very telling, because everybody thinks, first it was Favreau and Filoni were our heroes. They were fighting the good fight. They were trying to get Star Wars back on course. Then Filoni showed his hand, just being absolute nuts, just only wanting to do his Clone Wars, re-envisionings or rebirths, whatever. And so then I hear people say, well, Favreau's our guy. Okay, Filoni's a little crazy, but Favreau's our guy. Favreau's not your guy either. He's Kathleen Kennedy's man. He's a better storyteller than her or a lot of the people she's had attached to Star Wars. That's not, that's obvious. He's a better storyteller, certainly. He's an amazing director. He's done wonderful films, in the past. I did watch the season 1 of Mandalorian back in the day, and it's a well-told story. But he's been very explicit and very plain about the fact that he's only filling in the gap between Return of the Jedi and the New Order of the sequel trilogies, rather. That's what he's doing. He's writing. He's trying to get you to Rey and Kylo Ren. He's not trying to change the direction or retcon anything. He's just filling in the gap. And so people thinking he's this and that. No. Talking about pirated things, Edlish fan 198 says, is it wrong to steal from a socialist? Again, I'm not necessarily against piracy. Just saying I don't do it because I wouldn't know how to begin with. But yeah, it's it's a good conversation. It's a good topic to be had. So you're not going to hear me, championing it or deriding it. Okay, so Favreau's response to the question, he said, look, I don't think anybody besides us would really even want the theatrical releases again. People my age who remember the original trilogy, sure, we might like it, but are we really even enough to buy it? And I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, people today, the Star Wars fans of today, that's not their Star Wars. Their Star Wars. And he said, there's the prequel fans, that was their Star Wars, not the original trilogy. And he said, people today, Gen Z and whatnot, their Star Wars is what Disney's doing, or the Mandalorian might be their Star Wars. And, while on the surface, that's not incredibly insulting or anything, I think it really betrays a very deep misunderstanding of how a mythology in our culture works. as I say in the title of this office hours, it's not a community sandbox. A great franchise that's taken root in our culture, in our, collective consciousness, isn't a community sandbox that different generations get to come in and make something that they like in the Star Wars universe. And now someone's going to go over here and that's their Star Wars, and that's your Star Wars, and that's my Star Wars. And no, that's not what it is. There is room for organic evolution, in a franchise, but Star Wars took hold because of the hero's journey of Luke Skywalker. That is what held Star Wars in our public consciousness for decades, long past the point where even before the prequels came about, toys were still being sold. Children still knew who Darth Vader was, even before the prequels were being sold. Now, it is true when the prequels came out, because of, just the blast of marketing and the blast of, you did have a lot, and many of you people here are probably from that generation who, were kids or teens or whatever when the prequels came out, and that was your first exposure to Star Wars. And I have heard from this or that person that, only watched the prequels and kind of thought that was it. But I don't think that's as rampant an experience as other people might make you think. I think more often than not, the prequels led people to the original trilogy, or at least you couldn't really watch the original trilogy for very long or go very long if you really loved it and really rewatched it and really got into the universe. It's just a matter of time before you hear about Luke and you go watch the original trilogy. It was an era where people's attention spans, kids, attention spans weren't so tarnished, and they could understand the value of a movie made, 10, 20, 30 years ago. So, it's like today, try to get a teenager or a preteen or child to watch any movie that wasn't made in the last 5 years. Oh, so old. Oh, so long. Kids today can hardly watch movies made today because they're the TikTok generation. That's their only attention span when it comes to any kind of variation of a narrative. So I think he misunderstands that idea. Star Wars it's not like relative truth or something, that's silly too. Oh, it's my truth, your truth. Oh, it's your Star Wars, but it's not my Star Wars. No, that's not how Star Wars works. Star Wars took hold in the consciousness because of Luke Skywalker's story, the original hero's journey, the original trilogy. And if you go too far away from that, you can't just explain that as, well, that's just not their Star Wars, but it's my Star Wars and your Star Wars. No, that doesn't work. I'm not saying it would necessarily be lucrative or not to sell the original theatrical cut. In fact, I don't know if it would be. I think enough of us would buy it that it would be worth it. But today's generation, they're a lost cause for a number of different reasons. No offense if you're, a Gen Zer here. I'm sure that, if you're listening to my channel, you got to be an exception, right? But yeah, so it's such a fundamental misunderstanding of what Star Wars is, of how mythologies work in culture, to think that it's, different things to different people. Now, I mean, to some degree, that's true, right? Maybe you watched the original trilogy and you didn't so much resonate with Luke. You really resonated with Han, the space pirates, kind of thing, or whatever, smugglers. And, yeah, so it can appeal to different people for different reasons, but it's not, to the point where it becomes different, completely disparate versions. And that's what Disney's trying to do now. Disney's sequel trilogy already is a completely disparate thematically, narratively, character motivationally, in every way. It's a disparate thing from the original trilogy, from what Star Wars has always been. Let me get to the super chat here from Dr. Y. Thank you, sir. Said, I miss the old days of the prequels versus the originals. I know, right? Let's go back to that. I always thought that was kind of a silly argument, and I still do. I think people who just kind of take a dump on the prequels are really kind of misguided. I don't think anybody, and I wouldn't agree with it. I don't think anybody's saying the prequels are better told stories. They might have more of a cultural impact on somebody if they grew up and that was their first encounter with Star Wars, and that was, the media and all this kind of stuff, the prequels. Yeah, fine. That's your cultural experience of it. But they're not as great of a well-told story as the original trilogy, but I also don't think they were really meant to be or trying to be. There are reasons for that, of course. Lucas is doing everything by himself at this point. He's not allowing other writers or directors to come in and kind of help him shape things up as he needed, in the original trilogy. He's not someone that should be writing and doing everything on his own. But the prequels only really work if you think of them in light of the original trilogy. And if you do think of them in light of the original trilogy, I think they work rather well. Now, I do think some things that the EU had going before the prequels came out, let's just be honest, probably worked better, but still being part of Lucas's vision, still being part of the story from the man who created Darth Vader and whatnot. I think they're great. I think they're great to watch and study, knowing what they are. So I never really got the whole prequels versus original trilogy debate. I think they go hand in hand. That's just me there. Take a look at the chat here because I got some people that made some comments while I was going on and on there. Eldridge fan said the Sith evolved from Darth Bane into politicians, bureaucrats, and Kathleen Kennedy. yeah. That's it sounds like you're just being funny there, and you are. But that's actually a pretty good analogy because the Sith, the Sith had an agenda. They don't care about the incarnations they're taking. The Sith didn't care about the Republic. They didn't care about the Senate. These are just roles that they're taking to achieve their agenda in the end. And that's exactly what, Kathleen Kennedy and Bob Iger and a lot of the storytellers are doing today. And it doesn't just apply to Star Wars. Like I said, I've talked about it before. You can't take a character like Superman and just do a different version. Okay, well, this isn't your Superman, but it's, some people like it, so it's their Superman. No, Superman is Superman. Our Batman is Batman, our Captain America is Captain America. There are natural, cultural, organic evolutions that take place over the decades. But any mandated change is not going to it's going to divide. So, like the New 52, when Didio and co came in and just editorially mandated from top down that change to the DC universe. You had Superman and Batman and all the DC characters. They'd gone through organic changes since the moment they were created in the 20th century. Sure. But their suits pretty much were the same. I mean, little artistic changes here and there, but for pretty much, they were the same. Their powers, pretty much the same, once they solidified in the cultural consciousness, at the beginning for decades. And Didio wanted to make them Marvel. So this culturally mandated editorially mandated change for the New 52, remake them all in a darker Batman-esque, make Batman himself much darker, remake the whole universe into a place that's just not even fun to spend time anymore. Well, you're going to have some people that like it, but now you've divided. You don't have, you can't even read the New 52 outside of, this or that story or this or that run that just somehow happened from these creators or whatever who weren't really into the whole change. Aside from some this or that stories here and there, it's not a universe you want to spend time in. It's not a universe that's fun. It's not the DC universe anymore. It's totally mandated change. And that's what they want to do with Star Wars. Yeah, Horrid Film says the despecialized editions are glorious. Yeah, those the Blu-rays despecialized editions, what they're called. Thank you. Yeah. Jackhammer City said, I found out that the 1930s Superman enters the public domain in 2034. Hopefully, if nothing stands in the way of that or rules don't get changed, that'd be pretty sweet. Spidey Rule said, reminds me of when Nintendo wouldn't put their classic game on the Switch and then complain that people are using emulators. Yeah, that's right. People want it, they're going to get it. And Nintendo, PlayStation, a lot of those companies, they lost out on money. They lost out on money ultimately because I have an emulator that I bought, and I don't need to pay all the extra money for a Switch membership now because I got an emulator. And if somebody like me who's not really tech savvy, who doesn't really know how to do the emulators or ports and all that kind of stuff, or piracy even, when it comes to downloading, somebody like me who just doesn't really know how to do all that, if you offer it, then I'll probably buy it, but if you don't offer it, then yeah, we're going to seek out where we can get it. And then when you turn around and decide, okay, wait, guys, now we're offering it. Well, you lost a lot of money already. So it's pretty silly. Eldritch Fence, I've been listening to interviews from James Lucchino. He's becoming my literary hero. He talks about the care he and others writers took in keeping to the canon. Great writer and great, great contributor to the EU. He really is great. I should listen to more interviews of him. Ghost Planet says, I grew up with the prequels and the original trilogy and the 03 Clone Wars. Yeah, we should talk more about the original Clone Wars series, the Gennady, what's his last name? The 2D one. Basically gives the story of Anakin becoming a Jedi Knight. You know, you leave him at in Attack of the Clones, and he's still a Padawan. Samuel Proctor says, I disagree. The prequels are horribly written and muddies up the OT, creating so many problems the OT didn't have. I mean, that's a conversation. I'm not arguing with you saying that's not the case. That's why I kind of hinted at, I think the EU did some of this better already. But I don't, I wouldn't go so far as you do that the prequels are without merit or that they aren't, because the fact is the EU after the prequels took shape around the prequels. It morphed them in and went forward with that. We have a lot of great stories from the EU that took place considering, comics and novels and whatnot. But no, I get the argument. I'm not arguing with it. Spidey Rules says, Superman is Superman. Batman is Batman. Captain America is Captain America. Yes, and Peter Parker is Spider-Man, while Miles Morales is Miles Morales. Yeah, that whole, it's a good example. It's a good example as we're talking here about them wanting to change, a story, change a franchise. Miles Morales is a perfect example. Now, I'm not an expert on, the original appearances of him and everything. My understanding is that he appeared as an alternate universe Spider-Man, and that's fine. You want to do an alternate Elseworlds universe, whatever, Spider-Man, that's fine. What if this other person got the powers? What if, whatever. But it's pretty obvious that I would imagine even from the get-go, I think, was it Bendis that created him or did a lot of the writing of him at least? And Bendis is very much ideology driven, even though he's done good stuff here and there. Before, today's ideology overrun. But I think it's just pretty easy to see that it wasn't long before that character, people were trying to replace Peter Parker. Now, you say, well, they haven't replaced him. Miles Morales is just with him. Miles Morales has the same powers, not even the same powers, but more powers in addition to what Peter Parker has. Miles Morales can do everything Peter Parker can and more. Miles Morales has to be known as Spider-Man. Don't call him Spider-Boy. Don't call him anything else but Spider-Man, because we have to have a minority as Spider-Man. This is the fantasy of the ideologues. They want, this is in what they did more in the comics, getting Jane to be Thor, getting Sam Wilson to be Captain America. They want, and don't you dare call them anything different. They are these titles. We need to replace these white heteronormative tyrants, characters or whatever. And people have allowed Miles Morales to stick around, which I think is really a shame on people who consume this stuff. People who keep going to see these Into the Spider-Verse movies. People who keep playing the games, and they've allowed this character to come in who will, mark my words, he will eventually replace Peter Parker if things go unchecked. If they continue to have their way as they're going to. They're on that destination. He didn't even exist in the same universe or reality as Peter Parker at first. So, they got him over there. They got him with the same name, got him with the same powers, even more powers. They're on their way. They're on their way. And people who are like, well, no, I think it's okay. Into the Spider-Verse was actually a really good movie. You're just paving the way for that. You absolutely are. Andre Hernandez for $5. Thank you so much. So this might sound extreme, but I feel like Filoni is the Dan DiDio of Star Wars. He only cares about his own story, and he thinks he is the best. His is the best. I have no love for Dave Filoni whatsoever. I just really don't. Before I knew a lot about him, some of the Clone Wars episodes are well done. And he was listed as a writer, so you think, oh, maybe. No, he was an executive producer. The man cannot write to save his life. It's just he's fan fiction. He's a fan fiction writer, and people let him do it. I just do. How the fact that people can literally say that Ahsoka is not a Mary Sue just blows my mind. She's 100% a Mary Sue. Well, she had trainings. It makes sense. No, it doesn't make sense. A Mary Sue, the definition of Mary Sue isn't just that you can have powers or do things without training. All right, that's part of it. That's one indicator. It's also the fact that you are the story never takes you to task. The treatment of you, the story, the narrative comes around you and makes you the bestest ever. You don't have to learn in terms, and when I mean learn, I don't mean necessarily training. I mean, you don't have to learn from your mistakes. You never admit that you're wrong. You are given everything. You're given all of the cool people to fight. You are, when you do make a mistake, no one makes you sit in time out for it. You're just told that you need to believe in yourself even more. This is Ahsoka. Every single incarnation of her, every single handling of her, she's 100% a Mary Sue. And I do think, Sound Graver says Ahsoka is worse than Rey. I think so. Rey is maybe more over the top and evident right away that she's a Mary Sue, but Ahsoka's more insidious and is more dangerous to the franchise because of it. Got me on a rant, guys. Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Spidey Rules. I was talking about the female or minority replacements of all the heroes. Yeah, Kate Bishop for Hawkeye, and people are letting that pass. With the Disney Plus nonsense. Yeah, I agree. Filoni definitely hates the EU and EU fans. Even when he tries to sort of give a nod to it, he does it wrong, or he does it, and I think, a way more to be an insult than a real nod. Like when he was doing that episode, he's like, well, we wanted to have Darth Revan, the Force Goes to Darth Revan, appear. Like, do you know Revan's story? He's redeemed. He's not a Darth anymore. That's ridiculous, Thank you, Ed Star. My rants are the best. Aiken Lord said, a Mary Sue isn't just overpowered. They also wear plot armor, have no challenges, never need to learn, and adapt to failure. Exactly. It makes sense that Ahsoka takes down Darth Maul all by herself. It makes sense. The people's defense of this is just, it tells you how poisoned the culture is, these people aren't making logical story defenses. They're making defenses of their bestest ever favorite. They've kind of bought into that, Ahsoka waifu mentality of Filoni. Final Fantasy fan, good to see you there. Darth Enigma said, I didn't have strong feelings of Ahsoka when she first appeared. Now I actively despise her. I think that's the typical trajectory for a lot of people with Ahsoka. When she first came about, interesting idea, right? What if Anakin had a Padawan? Interesting. She'd have to be a brat like he is, but she can't become the very fabric. She can't become the freaking Gandalf of the Star Wars universe. It's just nuts. That is absurd. Yeah, Steve Rogers is the one true Captain America. I agree. Chaotician Nunez says Lucas tried to get other writers and directors to work on the prequels, but they all turned it down. They either feared the pressure or because they wanted more creative control. Yeah, I think that's, you say more creative control. And that's what I mean. Yeah, he consulted people, but I mean, kind of with Return of the Jedi, I think I like Return of the Jedi. I love Return of the Jedi, but I think even that could have been a better movie if he had a director with a little more power, like, what's his name? I'm blanking on the director for Empire Strikes Back, but that was basically like his teacher, even though it's George Lucas's baby, he can't go in there and tell his teacher, no, do it like this. This was his mentor, his teacher doing Empire Strikes Back. And, I think any director that Lucas works with now is not going to have the creative control. And, they shouldn't have so much creative control, but, yeah, it's good points. I'm not done talking about this, and we can keep talking about this. I had in the description though, Irving Kershner. Thank you. Forgot, just blanking on the name. I kept wanting to say the writer, but that's not it. I think I might save the editing talk for later, because I think we're still going to talk about this, and we can still talk about this. And collecting maybe for later too. I will talk about the podcast format that's coming up with the EU book studies, though. I'll give a little bit more information about that. Basically, if you missed the book study we just did right before this stream on Empire's End, I was mentioning that my Star Wars EU book studies going forward aren't going to be live streams like they've been. It's basically just way too challenging for my schedule, for my energy and everything, to do 2 live streams a week. I know that's absurd, for a lot of YouTubers, they stream every night or whatever, but just the way my life is, the way my work, my family and ability, our responsibilities and so forth are, and social energy, because I'm not, Mr. Extrovert. It was just becoming so much a challenge, and I kept having to cancel occasionally, or kept having to go on hiatus with them. But the Star Wars EU book studies is something that I think really needs to be kept in the forefront. I just really applaud a lot of the other channels, Matt Wilkins, and the channels and the bloggers and the websites that keep the Star Wars EU alive. It's so necessary. And the more they try to cherry pick from the EU and ruin it, or try to evolve Star Wars, or make it into something else, I think we need to keep showing it, because the EU is so fascinating. I talk about this a lot, but I never get tired of talking about it, because the EU is absolutely fascinating, even if you don't like parts of the EU. And it's true. Some areas ebbed in quality, some were better in quality or whatever. But even if you don't like it, or you don't like this era, you don't like that they folded in the prequels or the Clone Wars or whatever, fine. But in the EU, we've had something that I don't think we've ever had in popular fiction ever before or ever since. And that is a group of different writers, different companies, different publishing companies, all under or with the rights to Lucasfilm or whatever, but, Dark Horse, Weston Games, Del Rey or Bantam, whoever originally was publishing the books or whatever, different companies, different artists, different people, different writers, different video game programmers, really different entities writing in this shared universe. And it should feel a lot more broken and disconnected and crazy than it does. And it really holds together quite well, all things considered. And that's because all of these people, as different as they were, as different ability levels that they had or whatever, they all had a true love for the original trilogy Star Wars. They truly loved what that story meant to them in their life, and whether consciously or subconsciously, they had an understanding about what it meant to culture. And that's why the EU holds together unlike any shared universe that has. I'm not a big 4K Warhammer 4K person, but to my knowledge, I don't even think that holds together continuity wise and thematic wise and everything. I don't think Dungeons and Dragons continuity, holds together like that. But Star Wars did with the EU for so many years, and it was glorious and really fascinating. So I think that it needs to be continually put out there, especially in light of all the crap Disney's giving us. So I think that the EU book studies I do, it's just one little thing that I can do for it, needs to continue and be a little bit more regular than I was able to do, making it a second live stream a week. So they're going to be pre-recorded now, and they'll be released as videos here on my channel. They'll still be interactive, though. A book study is a study. It's, it's not just me teaching the book. It's Al talking. It's you guys commenting. So we are going to pre-record them, but we're going to get your feedback before we pre-record. So I'll be putting out a community post on Outbound Flight, what chapters we're going to go through first before the first one drops. And maybe not for the first one, because I won't have so many of your comments or questions, but as we go through each one, I'll be addressing your comments and questions at the beginning or through the study. We'll also post them or publish them as premieres on YouTube. So Al and I will be in the chat with you as the book study is going on. So if you have comments and questions or comments or your ideas, about something that we're saying in there, throw them out. If you never watched a premiere of a recorded video, it's just like a live stream. There's the live chat there that goes on while the video is playing for the first time, and I'll be in there and we can talk about it. So they'll still be very interactive, but that'll help me keep it a little bit more regular, going through Outbound Flight first, and I don't know what we'll go through next. And I thought, well, why not if it's going to be pre-recorded and regular, why not make it not only a YouTube video, but a podcast, because YouTube lets you do podcasts now. A lot of podcasters, put the video on YouTube and then throw the podcast out there on other formats. So that's what it's going to do. Okay, podcasting. And then I thought, well, as long as I'm podcasting, I used to have a podcast way back in the day. It was called Iconicast Podcast. And this was like 2000, shortly after 2013, after Man of Steel came out. It was kind of a reaction to a lot of that stuff, the Snyderverse and so forth. And Al was my co-host with the Iconicast Podcast. And it was the point of the podcast was to keep holding up the iconic versions of these characters across the board and across the different places and franchises and whatnot that people were deconstructing, really trying to shine light and continue to hold up the iconic versions. And I think we still need that. So the Star Wars EU book studies is going to be part of the rebirth of the Iconicast Podcast, which will still be here on my channel. I'm not going to, make you subscribe to something else. But if you do like podcast, if you listen to Sound, Spotify or whatever, other places, I'll try and put it on as many podcast platforms as possible. Or you can just keep watching on YouTube, and that's fine. But as part of the Iconicast Podcast, and as part of Iconicast Podcast, I'm also going to talk about the collection of physical media, for these franchises, for Star Wars, for DC, Marvel, or whatever, really just trying to shine a light and bolster the importance of holding up the standards, holding up, not letting people forcefully evolve these things that we love, these stories and these franchises we love, because that's agenda driven and it's detrimental to the story and it's not going to resonate with culture and so forth. Everything my channel's about. So the podcast will focus on more. They won't be more like, something like this office hours live stream. This is more ranting about what's going on, which is good. I think we need a lot of this, but the Iconicast Podcast is going to be more about, I'll do videos on how to find some of the things in the EU, for example. I'll do more recommendation. My recommendations will probably be stuck on the Iconicast Podcast. Again, it's going to be on this channel. You don't have to go anywhere other place for it, but it's also going to be in podcast format. And really just talking about the good stories and how to continue to celebrate the good stories and keeping the good stories as much as my little, tiny channel can be responsible for in the public eye, so whatever my little 16,000 subscriber count, keeping it in the public eye. So that's what's coming up. And you'll see, we'll have the first Outbound Flight book study as part of the Iconicast Podcast, the Star Wars EU, study within 2 weeks, 2 weeks tops. And, the other reason for that was because I was talking some months ago about, this year dropping 2 podcasts. I wanted to do my Heroic Archetypes podcast, which people seem excited about, and that's still happening. Sound Engravers finalizing the theme music for it. But then I was saying, I also teach a class called American Ghost Stories, in which I delve into the different incarnations of these like foundational ghost stories of America, Sleepy Hollow, those kind of things. And people were saying, yeah, but you should do more of these stories too. And do Dracula. We'd be more interested in that. I was like, well, yeah, I love Dracula. It'd be a great study to do. So I thought, well, let me just bring back Iconicast Podcast and I can fold in all of that stuff. So people weren't so excited about just the narrow focus on American Ghost Stories, which I get. That was a class I taught. So Iconicast Podcast can fold all of that in. We can do a study through Dracula. We can do, more of that kind of thing. And as a podcast format, I'm kind of excited about it because it's not just bound to YouTube. I can see where else it grows, how else, I can play with that idea and whatnot. So Iconicast Podcast will be free. That'll continue to be on my Professor Geek YouTube channel. The Heroic Archetype one, I'm thinking about just making a member exclusive, but so anyway, that's what's coming. That's all that. I wanted to make sure I said that because I wasn't able to say it in the last stream because Al and I just had a limited time to talk about Dark Empire there before the stream started. So wanted to get that in. Checking with the chat while I was going on and ranting. Conan novels and comics. Yes, Eldritch fan. Conan novels and comics. Great stuff. Great stuff. I'm a big fan of the Robert E. Howard novellas and short stories he wrote, but I also like, I remember in high school really loving Robert E. Jordan's Conan novels. And their comics, of course, from the old Marvel days. And was it Dark Horse that took it over from Marvel at one point? But the illustrations, so good. Yeah, definitely talk about some of that stuff. Great idea. Nathaniel Zoslow says, collecting, huh? I've been collecting the SH Monster Arts. Oh, action figures for years. For me, the problem is finding a place to keep the boxes and come in. That's a great point. Maybe I'll talk about this briefly. First of all, thanks to Alec Purdue, who sent me an SH Monster Arts Kong versus Godzilla, which was pretty sweet. But I just discovered this channel the other day. It's an interesting idea. I was talking to Sound Engraver a little bit about it. It's an old channel. I mean, he's been going for a while and he's huge. Films at Home, I think is what it's called. And I haven't watched all of his videos, so I'm sure he gets into some stuff I disagree with here and there. But his channel is more just about collecting, and he reviews like 4K Ultra editions of movies and stuff when they come out and stuff like that. But he started a podcast himself, I think, a year ago, and I listened to his first episode, and he said something that made me. It's like I should have believed this all along, and I would have if I heard somebody say it out loud, but it just kind of clicked for me when he said it. He said, you should curate your collection. And basically, that's the difference becoming a collector and a hoarder. And I thought, that's so true, because your collection should say something about you. And it's so easy to fall into the trap, especially if you're wanting to collect physical media. It's like, oh, well, I need to collect all I can because this stuff might not be available one day. And I need to, hey, if you're getting rid of some DVDs, give them all to me. I'll take them all, or I'll take all these books. Oh my gosh, I can't waste books. I'll take them all. And then pretty soon you don't have a place to keep them all. You have some in storage, which might as well just be, gone, because, when are you ever actually going to get to look at those or whatever? And let's just be honest, when it comes to movies, comics, and books and whatnot, you can only consume but so many. So I think it's a matter of curating. I love that idea of curating your collection. What do I love? What do I need to keep? So for example, my Star Wars EU collection, well, I want all things Star Wars EU. I want to curate that continuity, so that's in everything. Scholarship wise, I might collect just a lot of things that have to do with superhero movies, but I can be more selective. I've gone through my DVD collection already, and I've got a huge pile. I'm like, some are doubles, when you get the DVD and then you get the Blu-ray later or whatever. And they're graphic novels that I've been given or read in the past. And I'm like, this kind of sucks or whatever, but it's still on my shelf. I'm like, well, it's just important to have it. No, it's not, And so I really like this idea of curating the collection. So that's something that I'll be kind of documenting on the Iconicast podcast too, is, the decisions I make, in my own collection and showing, what I've got so far. Video games, I collect CDs because I love, the good rock and everything from yesteryear and whatnot. So I'll be talking about that and maybe looking into places where you can sell or trade in. I mean, ultimately you can just donate to Goodwill, but I think it's important, if you're a collector, to curate the collection. I'm not saying you have to go through and prune and throw things away. Some people are going to want to keep more than others. That's fine. Some people have the space to keep more and the space to display and the time, to go through things more than others. And I don't think you should ever give anything away that you're going to regret later, or trade in or sell or whatever. But I think if, like in my case, there's a lot of filler in my collection that I can sell or trade in, and then have the resources then to go get some really big collector item. Like for the Star Wars EU, those of you who collect Star Wars EU know that some things are pricey. Like, one of the editions of, this series or whatever is only available in paperback, and for this crazy amount of price or whatever, so that's something that I think is a great idea. And I'll be talking more about that in my own journey on that with the Iconicast podcast. Super chat here from Andre Hernandez. George Lucas turned Star Wars into a story and tale told for generations. The EU and the people involved in the EU turned Star Wars into a mythology. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It depends on your definition of mythology. I mean, you can certainly say Lucas, created this mythology, but in terms of deepened it into a mythology that covers different eras and different, the EU did that. And I think Lucas, to some degree, wanted to do that and had it in mind to do that, but for whatever reason, after Return of the Jedi, he just decided, I'm done. No more Star Wars. I'm done. And it's like, you can't be done. People want it, and thankfully he let the EU happen and gave his blessing, to a lot of it. And it was continuity. That was Star Wars, the only Star Wars you were getting, and it was wonderful. So, I mean, God bless the EU. Let's see. Dr. Y for $2. Thank you so much. Said, when it comes to collecting, don't be Smaug. Yeah. Don't be the dragon collecting the hordes of gold. Yeah. And I'm bad at that. I'm not a hoarder technically, but I can get into that hoarding. I'll need this. I'll need this. And I've got boxes of things now that have been in storage. I'm like, I just need to let that go. And it's hard sometimes too, because you want to sell things. You don't just want to give it away. If you don't have anybody to give it away to, but then it's selling things is hard, even in today's world where a lot of people are getting interested in more physical media. Like I've got comic books that I'm just going to have to end up throwing away. Goodwill won't take them. And, nobody's going to buy them, put them on Mercari or eBay or whatever. Nobody buys them. And, there's like when I was collecting again, when DC Rebirth, was wonderful, returning our characters. It was great. But, after like a couple years there, it all went south. Some titles went south earlier than others. And before the writing was really on the wall, I still had some of those comics. And looking back now, I'm like, no, I'm just going to, I definitely, any Batman comics I had, I don't even know if I want to keep any of the pre Catwoman Batman marriage when it looked like it was going to happen, because it's Tom King, garbage, throw those away. Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, don't be smog. Sound Engraver, my dear sweet wife's, for $5. Thank you, love. Says, just put up my stream for tomorrow. Some good writing advice for your prospective writers out there. Yeah, Sound Engraver has a great idea for her topic tomorrow, world building and stuff. And she's got it, got the stream up. She says, I think 5:45-ish is her time, 5:30-ish. I don't know. She'll correct me. But yeah, it starts as, thank you, Sound Engraver. You're on my notification list. Yeah, notifications when they work, right? When they don't work, who knows? YouTube deciding to work or not. I get them sometimes for channels that don't. It's funny. I almost think it's for the bigger channels. Like, I don't know if it's so much. Every single time Ethan Van Sciver, Comic Arts Pro Secrets goes live, I get a notification every single time. And I haven't really sat down and watched one of his live streams through in the longest time. Not because I don't appreciate his channel or anything, but I just don't have time to watch sort of news commentary and, things like that. When I do have time for YouTube, it's more educational stuff or historical or religious things and whatnot. So I don't really keep up with what's going on in the modern industry and stuff like that so much anymore. But they never fail to give me a notification for his channel because he's so huge, right? But I can, click the bell on a lot of other, channels, and I never get a notification of a drop or anything like that. Nostalgia channels or whatever, never get a notification. So I think it's just a silly algorithm thing or something. 5:45, Sound Engraver said. Okay, yeah, I was right. Samuel Proctor says, my parents got me a freaking 4K steelbook of Jurassic Park for Christmas. I didn't even tell them that's the exact medium or physical media I wanted to collect. That was a great surprise. That's awesome. I do need a good version of Jurassic Park. I haven't gotten into 4K because, for one, I don't think even now I'll be able to afford a 4K television or player. I still have no reason to buy a PS5. And there are some movies, like some modern movies, that you're like, oh yeah, Blu-ray or a 4K of that might look amazing. But a lot of the things that I, collect, like I don't need to watch Stargate SG-1 in 4K. Don't even need to watch it in Blu-ray. DVD is just fine. It's how I watched it when it came out. It's how it was shot to be presented. I think a lot of the super high def, treatments of older media, you're not really getting the story that you were intended to experience back in the day. Oh, but it's such a clearer picture. Yeah, but I shouldn't be seeing all these little flaws in the makeup of these characters or whatever. It was shot and it was made to be presented in a certain way back in the day. I'm not saying that's I'm sorry, you just got me on a I kind of used your comment as a springboard into something totally different there, Tom. Was it Tom? Yeah. No, Samuel Proctor. So, but I'm glad for you. That's awesome. And if you're collecting 4K, that's a great start there. That's really cool. Yeah, maybe I'd sing a different tune if I had a 4K TV and a 4K player, but I spend like $500 to $1,000 just to get both of those things. It's ridiculous. Chol says, ever collect comic strip books? I have several Dick Tracy and Lil Abner books. Dick Tracy books. That's awesome. I have some good comic strip books, some Superman comic strips, He-Man comic strips, the old newspaper comics and whatnot, if that's what you're talking about. I've never set out specifically to just collect those. I'd love to get some old Dick Tracy comics. I never really got into the old Dick Tracy. I mean, obviously I was, not old enough, But when the movie came out, which I still love, I think the movie's underrated, the Warren Beatty movie, I was following some Dick Tracy comics that were re-emerging then and stuff like that, and I enjoyed it. That was fun. Mention of how he says, "Are you familiar with Oliver Harper's reviews and retrospectives?" That name does not sound familiar. Does not sound familiar, so I don't believe I am. Is he somebody I should check out? Tom Spiegel says, "So should I not have ordered a 4K Blu-ray of Train to Busan?" Yeah, I mean, I'm not like anti 4K. You know, I don't want to come across as that. I just don't see any reason that I need it personally. You know, again, with newer movies, if I watched a lot of newer movies, then it might be amazing, and I'd like to see more of it. I remember, like, even when I'm in the stores and I see like something like Marvel's The Avengers, you know, the 2012 movie. So over 10 years ago, you know, that was released, believe it or not. And I see it in 4K. I'm like, I don't like the way that looks, you know? And I'm not anti-progress. Like when I first saw high definition or first saw Blu-ray for things that were shot to be seen in Blu-ray, that was amazing. That's great, you know? And I do try to get Blu-ray when I think it's necessary. But I think that there's an impetus in some collectors just to need the newest technology no matter what. And I always want to keep love for the story and love for the presentation of the story at the core of my collecting. Not just the need to have the newest thing, you know? Because I think that can be detrimental to story sometimes. Spider Rule says, there are ways to convert an older TV show to HD without compromising the look of the show. If you can see the character's makeup, that's a bad remaster and not a fault of the format. Yeah, true. But at the same time, do I need to see... I was going to say Andy Griffith. Maybe I should pick a color TV show. Well, let's just stick with Stargate SG-1. Do I need to see Stargate SG-1 in 4K Ultra? Really don't. Really don't. I don't see anything wrong with just the DVDs that I'm watching now. If I obtain the Blu-ray in it, you know, someday or whatever, I'm not saying I wouldn't buy it if it wasn't that expensive or whatever, but I've got the complete series on DVD and it's glorious. It's glorious. I don't need to upgrade it. Matthew got it. So they upscale all the times, and most people don't notice. The early seasons of Game of Thrones were HDCM 1080p. Yeah, there's the thing with the dimensions and stuff like that. And you know, the other thing is I love classic Disney, right? Love classic Disney. And if I'm I'm trying to build my collection of classic Disney. I've got a lot of good classic Disney, but there's still some things, some of the wonderful classics that I still need to get on. I used to have a bunch of them, but my daughter loves DVDs and she ruined quite a bit of them, you know, she was younger. But you never know when they're going to be, you know, messed with, censored. I mean, it's only a matter of time. If not already, it's only a matter of time before the newest release of Peter Pan censors the, you know, Tiger Lily in the Indians, you know, section. You know, it's only a matter of time. They're already censoring, you know, Fantasia and different things like that. And so yeah, I want the stories as they were intended to be shown, content wise, technology wise, and everything. Gentle Savage, welcome, Gentle Savage. I didn't see you there. Said, yo, Prof, have you ever considered reading A Throne of Bones by Vox Day? It's basically a Vox's answer to Game of Thrones and the problem Vox Day has with George R. Martin's writing. I didn't even know about that. Did not even know about that. Was not a Game of Thrones fan myself. Even the book, I tried reading the first book and couldn't get through it. I didn't see what was so great about it. I really didn't. If you do, that's great. I'm not, you know, saying, oh, I can't believe you like it or anything. But for me, I just I don't get the appeal. But you say he's trying to fix even George R. R. Martin's writing. Interesting. I do like fantasy. I love fantasy. So, yeah. That Star says, keep it low res for me. I'm old school. Yeah. I just don't see a problem with it. All right. So I'm going to it's been about an hour here, so going to wrap it up here in a moment or two. 15,000 for all the Disney movies. That's ridiculous. Luis Sanchez says, yeah, the Disney movies are getting ridiculous. And I don't know if they're still doing the vault thing so much anymore. Remember when they did that? They would release a movie and it's only available for a certain amount of time before it goes back into the vault and we won't sell it to you. And they were surprisingly good at like really making it disappear. It was even hard to find used copies sometimes, back in the day. Now I think that's not really a thing anymore. But again, it's only a matter of time before they change the things on you. That's why physical media is so important to own it. So you get to watch the Diversity Day episode of The Office. Darn it, there's nothing wrong with that. It's hilarious, and all that kind of stuff. Never read Richard Adams books either, Gentle Savage. What books? The author doesn't ring a bell name, but give me some names of the books maybe. When I say I'm a fantasy fan, I haven't really delved into the genre of novels, so to speak. Like some people have when they say they're fantasy fans, but I like the genre of fantasy more so than science fiction. I love science fiction when there's fantasy or mythological elements to it, So obviously Star Wars, which isn't hardcore science fiction by any means, more like space fantasy or space opera or something like that. Love that. Like Flash Gordon, like Stargate SG-1, obviously, Farscape. But reading, like Sound Engraver loves to just read straight up science fiction. And I'm not crazy about that genre. She's a real aficionado of that, though. She's read all the classics and loves that stuff. And I'd be more into like the fantasy stuff, the Conan, not The Witcher, but I keep blanking on the name that The Witcher was based on, Eldritch, whatever, but stuff like that. Physical media for life. Yes, I agree, Darth Prime. The Prophet's Wormhole, Aliens, and DS9. Again, you guys are gonna hate me, but in Star Trek DS9 is one series that I haven't watched yet because I didn't like, and everybody's told me I should like it. Fanman has made me promise to watch it, and I'm going to. The things he's told me about DS9 makes me want to watch it because I love Babylon 5, and I know that Babylon 5 or DS9 was kind of Star Trek's way of trying to preempt Straczynski and do their own little Babylon 5, and so I like the themes, I like the setup, but I won't say hate. I really didn't see the appeal of Next Generation. I love the original Star Trek. Wagon Train in Space, sign me up. Captain Kirk all the way, swashbuckling. Next Generation just felt way too preachy for me. Great cast, great things about it, and some cool stories here and there. Not like I'll never watch it, but it's just, in general, I wouldn't call myself a Next Gen fan. Voyager, definitely not. But Deep Space Nine, I should watch. I should check out. All right, so wrapping it up here. What's going on here? Okay. The Imaginative Hobbyist says, have you heard about the potential of a Warner Bros. And Paramount merger? I have not. That both could be bought by Comcast in a couple of years. Get ready for SpongeBob meets Teen Titans Go. I have not heard about that. Erica Melbourne, that was the thing Witcher was based on. I have not heard about the Paramount Warner Bros. Merger. Interesting. I think something like that's inevitable, whether or not it's that merger or another one. With Disney buying up everything, I think it can't have but too many competitors. I think they're going to have to consolidate. And I think that's ultimately bad for the mythologies and the franchises. Didn't have to be, but I think in our culture, in our current times, it's going to be. So, all right. So wrapping up here, guys. Eldritch Fan says, any advice for a writer who needs to write longhand? You mean like handwriting, writing out? I don't know what you mean by longhand. Is that what you mean? Just having to handwrite on pages? Keep notebooks. Keep notebooks. Keep notebooks like you keep files. Different versions, different things. It's gonna be more work on your hand because you're handwriting, but you can use binders or whatever, copy things, get a Xerox copier, try and keep as many different versions and different notes and whatnot as you can, as you would on a computer, if that's what you got to do. Typing it all afterwards is such a pain. I lose momentum. Oh, there's some technology that you can use that kind of scans even handwriting and types it up. I'm not familiar with it, but I have seen that. You can look into that. That's a possibility. All right, guys, I am 5 minutes over the hour. that is crazy for me. My energy gone. But really blast hanging out with you guys tonight, both for the Star Wars EU. I love the recommendations I got for there and for this study. Pretty appreciate our office hour stream. Appreciate you hanging out with me. I'll be back next week for another one of these, and watch the community post. I'll be posting info coming up about the Iconicast podcast and specifically Outbound Flight book study, when that's starting, what chapters we're going to read for those who want to follow along. So thank you guys. Appreciate the super chats. Appreciate all just the regular chats, hanging out and enjoying ourselves. So we'll be back next week. Until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the true blue hero stories you love. Thanks for watching.